Doing, guys? Only a 2-minute delay. That's not bad. How's everyone doing today? All right. Mic works perfect. Thank you for confirming. Didn't even give you a break to take a piss. Sorry about that, but lots of things happening. I don't one stream after the other. But we gotta get going. Monday, market moving. So a lot of things to cover today. So let's not waste any time. Let me just share my screen. All right. Lots of things to discuss, both on higher time frames and lower time frames, to be honest, because a lot of things are happening. Obviously, on lower time frames, what I'm waiting here, which might be the more pressing issue, since I'm assuming you're looking for long opportunities in the next few hours, is a typical 30-minute div on Bitcoin, which has not happened yet. Simultaneously, I'm also looking at USDT dominance. This combination has been my favorite in taking scalps in the last few days, since the market did not really provide substantial flushes or corrections, right? So all we could do recently was taking these scalps, and with scalps I mean the last time we had a nice divergence on Bitcoin was here, and we could have swinged that or scalped that, whatever you prefer, $5,000, right? So that's a pretty nice move. That's the perks of the bull market, but at the end of the day, we're only dealing with 30-minute RSI resets. Now, what I'm looking at here is a divergence on the 30-minute, which will take some time to form, right? So what we will be looking at is something like this. Can also form a bit lower, doesn't really matter. I like to evaluate local triggers and not give a prediction on the price at all. Might not form a 30-minute divergence at all, right? Might just nuke further and then form a divergence. Doesn't matter. Whenever you see this, you consider longs. Has been working very well in the last few days, and this is what I will apply regarding scalping. And then what we have noticed is that whenever Bitcoin is printing a divergence, USDT dominance is doing the same. As you can see, USDT dominance now oversold on the 30 minutes. So here also you will look for something like this, and then you can take longs with a very easy invalidation. What we did last week in fundamentals was that we did wait for this 1 hour bull dip on Bitcoin, right here. This was the last dip before this retest of the 120k, 119k area. At the same time, we did have a bearish divergence on USDT dominance as well, right? So helps a lot to split your screen like this and only look at this, to be honest. And while these divergences are forming, what's best to do if you're like trading on your own, right, and you're not really dependent on anybody's setups, is that you just turn off notifications from Twitter, maybe even from Discord. Just look at these charts. They won't lie to you. If they get invalidated, then the invalidation is really easy. I mean, in most cases, it's not even 1% for Bitcoin. Might even be the case that sometimes you can have an invalidation of 0.50%, which is really good, and the reason why we wait for these divergences to form. Not a divergence here yet, as you can see, which for me is no trigger to be opening any long positions, no div and no trade, unless we get a flush. That's something completely different, and you get some limits filled on a flush. But other than that, I always wait for the divergence on Bitcoin and USD dominance. Depending on how Bitcoin dominance is trading, I will also wait, let's say, for a divergence on ETH. If Bitcoin dominance is strong, then I need the divergence on Bitcoin and on ETH. If Bitcoin dominance is weak, then I only need a divergence on Bitcoin and USDT dominance, and I can long Ethereum. in most cases, but of course, it's always a different scenario, right? So this is what I'm looking at on more lower time frames. I don't think we're there yet to be max longing this pullback on lower time frames. Higher time frame we will discuss in a bit. Let's see if you get any nice POC levels. Yeah, okay, that makes it helpful, of course, if you have POC levels that you can use in addition to a divergence, right? So if you see a divergence forming in the next few hours, something like this, then you have these POCs that you can use for a long 17,700, 17,600. But the trigger is very important, right? It is important that you understand the trigger and only pull the long if you have that confirmation, which is basically at least a 30-minute close within this divergence, right? So something like this. If the 30-minute doesn't close like that, it just starts nuking and it gets too wide for a divergence, and you don't take it, right? So always at least wait for the first 30-minute close. Of course, if some price action develops, then you can place a limit here, anticipating a 30-minute divergence to be formed, right? That's a bit more risky because then you're expecting the divergence to be formed, but it is not confirmed yet. When you wait for it to confirm, you have a safer setup, but you might end up entering a bit higher. And with a bit higher, I mean maybe 0.20%, right? Because what can be the case is basically that price action starts developing here, Bitcoin pumps, and at this point you say, okay, let me place a limit here at 17,650 because I will anticipate that a divergence will form. And what happens then is that Bitcoin can wick all the way here, but only confirm the divergence here, right? Because the 30-minute would close here. Then you would need to enter the long at 17,800, and of course you have a worse entry on lower time frames. And I mean, $200, $300 is not really worse, but if you're trying to be a perfectionist, right? So two ways to handle this: either you anticipate a divergence with more risk, or you wait for the divergence to be confirmed on Bitcoin and USDT dominance, and only then market enter along on Bitcoin. So this is what I'm looking at on more lower time frames. On more higher time frames, boy, how many things do we have to cover? Really a lot of things to cover today. But I think we have enough time. As discussed last week, daily bearish divergence on Bitcoin still not invalidated. Still here, a sneaky one, very tiny one, can barely be seen, but it is a divergence and we have to treat it as such until invalidated. What would have added confluence to this would have been a daily close here, man. Wow, that would have been a 3 drive on the daily. Would have been perfect. I mean, perfect if you took profits or looking for short positions, of course. Depends on the perspective. But as I said last week, as long as this daily bear div is not invalidated, I'm always looking for a move down to 112, 110, maybe an extension, a wick fill at 109, 108. But we will evaluate local triggers if we get there, when we get there. But looking at some things, man, that happened over the weekend, I'm a bit skeptical about the upside potential of the market from the weekend's levels, not the current levels because the market dropped a bit. But over the weekend, I think we have seen quite some risk off signals from ETH, for example. Finally reached that 4K area, and with that we have a daily bear div, right? So I think this was is a very, very good area to take some profits on Ethereum. Do not be too greedy. You can always rebuy if this resistance level is reclaimed. But look at ETH. Last time it retested these levels and printed a higher time frame divergence. The pullback or the correction that followed was always quite substantial. So if this divergence plays out here, I wouldn't be surprised to see ETH at least at this level in the next few weeks, 3,000 area, maybe even 2,800, 700. Of course, we will always evaluate local triggers. Might as well bottom here at 3,400. But this to me was a major risk off signal. I will explain in a bit why, in addition to the ETH chart, I think that way. I'm not talking about cycle highs, right? We're talking about local highs, and we trade the market level by level. Not really talking here about where the bull market ends and where it starts. I think it's too early for that. Don't teach me how to fish, give them a fish. Yeah, no, that's not what you get from me. There are a few people who played the Sui short in the fundamentals chat, and I really just gave out a rough. There were two people following that without an official call. I don't know if they're here, but a really great job in doing that. That's the point of my content, right? To not tell you enter now, sell now, buy now, but to help you understand my system, and if you like it, if you find it approachable, then adopt it for yourself and execute yourself as well. So that's my biggest goal with this. So ETH higher time frame resistance wouldn't be a buyer here. I would wait for a small correction in the next few weeks or a reclaim of this zone here. From lower, I would take some profits, but of course, at the end of the day, it is you that has to decide whether it is appropriate to take profits or not, right? Maybe you have other plans, maybe ETH is your retirement money. I don't know, right? So if that's the case, you might want to hold it higher. And just discussing support and resistance levels here. I think soon. And with soon, I mean that we could get one more pop in the market in the next few days, and I explain in a bit why. But soon, I think we will have major risk off signals in the market, given how some charts and how some indexes have been shaping up. Bitcoin dominance, you know that we discussed this daily bearish divergence here. The result is very, very clear. We caught this potentially even cycle top, right? Maybe a bit too early to tell, but maybe even a cycle top here, which led to a strong period for Ethereum and altcoins. Now we have this in reverse, right? Or there's a possibility that this can form in reverse, a daily bullish divergence on Bitcoin dominance. Basically the same scenario we had here, right? No difference at all. So if we get this in the next few days, close the daily above this daily close here, and print this divergence, I think Bitcoin dominance could locally bottom, and that could lead to a short period of relative weakness in Ethereum and altcoins, and this coming with ETH retesting that 4K area to me would be a major risk off signal. So keep this in mind. This could still rise a bit in the next few days, but also remember that we are trying to catch the Pico top, right? And the probability that we will be perfect is very low. So what that means is that if you're, for example, in Ethereum, right, you have such a nice long setup, wouldn't you say? If you have a bag on Ethereum, now you don't have to wait for this exact top to take some profits, right? It doesn't matter if you take some off at 3,800 or at 3,900. It doesn't really matter if you're swing trading this. All I'm saying is that we are approaching levels, or we have approached levels where it is appropriate to de-risk a bit, right? At the end of the day, it is up to you what you do with the information that is provided to you. You know that I have a more conservative approach to the market. I'm not a moon boy. I don't like to bull post about something that is at resistance, or I don't like to bear post about something that is at support, if you know what I mean, right? Perfect long setup. I would long this any time of the day. What about you guys? Really nice long setup. And just inversing the chart, because sometimes it makes more sense when it is from a perspective of a new long position, right? Compared to the perspective of a short position. So it's not just meant as a joke, but also to try and make it more relatable to you regarding what I'm looking at. Just looking over the chat for a second. What do we got? Important. And Musa said he now regularly buys BTC as RegoCam and either just a joke or a top signal. Watch out. Okay, no questions. Tag me if you have questions, guys, because otherwise I'll just assume you're talking to each other, okay? Because I cannot monitor the entire chat. But if you have something that you want to ask, just tag me. All right, let's get going. So Bitcoin, ETH, very clear. If this happens on Bitcoin dominance in the next few days, if you get this bull div, I think the market can pull back without Bitcoin moving as much. So if you get this bull div on Bitcoin dominance, and Bitcoin, let's say, only drops to this 110, 111, 112k area, I think Ethereum and altcoins will drop a lot more because they will become more sensitive to drawbacks on BTC. So that's something to consider. And then we go level by level, right? 112, we don't need to assume any lower as long as this level holds. If it starts finding acceptance below it, then we start considering new levels, but no need to try and predict that. We trade level by level, local trigger by local trigger, right? All right, let's look at some indexes because they will complement what we just said about Bitcoin dominance and about Ethereum and about Bitcoin. They will make a lot sense in my view. The price action is very, very clear. Very clear. The only way you can mess this up is if you zoom in too much, if you listen to all the noise on Twitter, there will be people calling for, is Tupi here? 55k Ethereum. Of course, that's just a joke, but you know what I mean, right? Stick to your analysis. As I said, if you're wrong about Ethereum, if this divergence invalidates and you took profits here, that's completely fine. You'll get this breakout and you'll get some form of retest. It might not be this perfect, but we will have some form of local triggers, right? Maybe a 30-minute bullish divergence that we will get at this point where we can re-enter, right? But under resistance, you don't look for new longs, you look for profit taking. Always pay yourself, especially if you're an ETH holder from these levels or from these levels. Pay yourself. But at the end of the day, do whatever is appropriate for you, right? This is no financial advice. Just discussing my levels. Okay, really good that Bitcoin is pumping a bit because this gives space for it to form a 30-minute divergence at a later stage, right? Because what we want for a divergence is something like this. First peak, then a nice bounce, and then a lower low a few hours later, right? So ideally for Bitcoin, we would need something like this and this. And then we long here. Very important. Just as a side note. Questions? Yassam, did you want to tag me or Dev? Probably me, right? When you look at Bitcoin dominance from February, March, do you think we're currently in a boring phase? What? No, I don't think we're in a boring phase. I think we had very strong performance from ETH and ALS in the last few weeks, right? I don't think it's a boring phase. This is not boring. I think we just need to set the right expectations, right? But we'll see if this forms. If this doesn't form and just loses this level, perfect for altcoins and Ethereum. But as long as this is a viable option, I expect some form of rotation here. But honestly, I really hope we get this bullish divergence, and not because I want a flush or a correction. Of course, I want it. Who wouldn't? But it would make reading the market way easier. You know what I mean? Would make it way easier if you have a bullish divergence here. So let's see what we get. Aave stops at break even, $288. I didn't take any profits yet, so it either stops break even or we take profits higher. If I don't talk about Aave, there's nothing to talk about. This my trading style is higher time frame, right? So you won't have me talking about spot backs every day. Total market cap in price discovery. Let's see if we get this. Let's see if we get another push in the market later this week and potentially print a bear div. If this bearish divergence forms on total market cap, then I wouldn't be interested in this zone, but more on this zone here. Because if we have a daily bear div on total market cap, I would expect something like this in the next few weeks and months. Maybe not this deep, right? But a deeper correction. So it would be a very, very similar setup here. So very, very important here on higher time frames. If you see this, I think it's a major risk off signal. And again, this invalidates. You just buy a bit higher, but with a nice confirmation, right? Not the end of the world. Don't tell yourself, if I take profits here, I'll miss the rest of the bull market. I know you're doing that, or some of you are doing that. If I take profits here, I'll miss Bitcoin going to 250K. No, you will not. Pay yourself. You'll buy higher if you get the triggers. So this is what makes me a little bit optimistic for a little more higher. But realistically speaking, how much higher is this, right? Like if it, let's say, it goes up another 3-4% from here, it's just like scalping territory. You know what I mean? Especially if you bought here or if you bought here. If you take profits here and you miss another 3% on total market cap, it doesn't really matter. Who cares about it, right? And that's why I'm saying, for me, this is either scalping territory, swing short territory, or a territory where I personally stay patient. I'm not willing to, I mean, apart from Aave, which was a nice scalp setup or try, I'm not willing to risk entering spot here, and we have the same situation here, right? I won't do that. This is TP territory for me, not buying territory. If you're asking where you should sell, you're doing the right thing. If you're asking me where you should buy, I think you need a different approach to the market. And of course, we are in a bullish phase, right? There will be 5, 10, 15% moves in the market on illiquid assets that you can capitalize on. No doubt about that. We're just talking about higher time frame, right? Higher time frame. So after total market cap, we have the same scenario with total 2. We could get a daily bearish divergence for total 2 as well. Conveniently at a macro resistance area, something like this. If we don't get a daily bearish divergence, we'll see. I would be a bit more optimistic, but it's still a major resistance zone. Still a major resistance zone, and ETH was at a major resistance zone as well, right? Buy levels depends on what happens here. If we get a daily bearish divergence, I wouldn't be interested in buying until we get a daily RSI reset. You know the drill. Daily bear div to daily bull div, 4 hour bear div to 4 hour bull div, right? Every RSI divergence will get reset at some point if it doesn't get invalidated. 100%. I guarantee you that. So if this plays out, if you get a bearish divergence here, say the market pumps a bit higher, the daily closes around here, right? And the second peak of the RSI makes a higher high, a lower high, and the price makes a higher high. Then we have a divergence, and then we can almost be certain that this divergence will get reset at some point. Of course, this will not happen within 2 or 3 days, right? This might take weeks, if not months. And then we would need to be patient for new swing trades because not always the market is giving you prices that are suitable for swing trades, right? I mean, mostly everything is overpriced at the moment, so you would need for a daily RSI reset before considering like mid to long-term buys. Of course, in between, just like here, there are always opportunities to trade, right? This was a nice move on Bitcoin, for example. I remember this Burj Khalifa. Always nice opportunities to trade. Of course, you won't see total market cap doing this. I hope not, at least. But you will always have opportunities in between. And for those opportunities, you basically do what I explained at the beginning of this stream, right? With the divergences on Bitcoin, either on the 30-minute or on the 1 hour, whatever is appropriate at that given time. But for higher time frames, I'm looking at this area and this area for total 2, and I think if we get this, we will have a nice correction for Ethereum. Maybe going into August, September, so let's see what we get. What do you think about Coinbase buying into this increase? It's a 1 hour chart, not really relevant for me. Historically speaking, ETF inflows have been the highest around tops. Go check it out yourself. Of course, it is also because ETF inflows that the prices increase in the first place, but they always end up locally topping the market. So we'll see how that unfolds. So that is the total 2. Look at this POC retest. This is something I had eyed. Oh my god. I didn't have alerts for this. Did we mention this last week? Please tell me we did. Would be a shame if this just nukes without the daily bearish divergence. But I mean, look at the daily RSI, guys. 85. I mean, if this doesn't call for overpriced, I don't know what does, honestly. Of course, daily RSI at 85 is not necessarily instantly a top signal, right? You always need the bearish divergence for more confluence. But look at this, for example. Did we have a bear div here? Not really, right? Look at this, just a lower high. Would be great if we get this, to be honest. If not, then my buy zone, or my first zone of interest, I would say, remains the same. 940, 935 billion. Definitely an area where I will try some scalp swings, a mix of that, right? Maybe not long-term holds, but I think alts could give you a nice 20-30% pump if we get this level at some point. If not, then we will just look for this bearish divergence. And I think if Bitcoin dominance manages to push a bit lower to form that bullish divergence, and total 3 manages to go a bit higher, might even do this, right? Might just wick to this resistance zone, close the daily within the div area, and forms a daily bearish divergence. I mean, that's possible. So very interesting. But yeah, I mean, again, here we're trying to be perfect, right? I think market is or has gone into TP territory. Maybe not fully, but partial profits for sure. And yeah, USDT dominance tells you the same picture, right? Not there yet, but with a little push higher for the market, we could get a daily bullish divergence, right? Same as here, same as here. And I wouldn't fade a daily bullish divergence on USDT dominance, never. It is not something that necessarily screams for a cycle top. I think we would need a more higher time frame divergence. But it's a big risk off signal, at least for the short to mid term, and then we wait for an RSI reset, right? So honestly, would really love to get these divergences because it makes it so easy to position into some swing shorts, right? If USDT dominance would do this, you would be buying in the market. Is that right? And then this would be a support zone. Maybe a wick to these POCs. But basically the same scenario with every index, right? Every index is screaming two things. First thing is take some profits, right? Pay yourself. Second thing is that if we're looking to be perfect, we might get another push in the market and go with these divergences on the daily for basically every index, apart from ETH that already has this divergence, right? So that would be the perfect scenario. What I would do if I was holding stuff, I would have taken profits. I would have taken like 20-30% profits. Last night, I would have taken 20-30% more if it did this divergence, and then maybe hold like 30% of your holdings in the very unlikely event that these divergences get invalidated, right? You're still exposed to the market a bit. But again, even if you take out everything, it's not the end of the world. You will not miss an all season. You will not miss the bull market because we are in a bull market. So you're trying to scale out of this, anticipating that we might enter a short to midterm corrective period, right? But even if it doesn't happen, as I said, you wait for the invalidation of this divergence and you just buy again. It's buying a bit higher, but with a better RR. Very simple. The best way to round trip a lot of profits when I entered crypto before and when I didn't know about all this stuff was that I would be in a position that's up 200-300%, right? Massive profits, really nice profits. And I would say, well, I'm not selling anything because what if I do? It does another 400%, right? That's what you think as an early market participant, but that's not really the case usually. Here, you remember that area I shared for total 3? This would be a nice confluence. 4.50 to 4.60. If we get this, it's a nice combination of scalps and swings. I mean, if you get this bullet divergence on the daily, we will probably end up testing higher levels on USDT dominance, but this is my first zone of interest. Very, very simple. Just zoom out and you'll see what we're talking about. BTC dominance, if we get another drop lower, right, which is still realistic, what we might as well get is this daily divergence on others BTC, something like this. And that's just additional confluence that money can rotate from altcoins back into Bitcoin. So you see, everything is aligning, right? We're discussing a lot of indexes and a lot of charts, but everything is telling the same story, right? A little push higher, we print perfect divergences. If we don't print the divergences, we don't have any major reason to be concerned. Of course, the market is getting overheated. Of course, taking some profits is appropriate, but ultimately, the big risk-off signals would be these divergences, at least following my system. I think we've been pretty good in timing local tops and bottoms in the last few years. Might have missed a few, but usually we were pretty good. So no reason for me to change my system with this track record. So we'll see if we get this final push. I would love this. I would really love this because this would make swing shorts on all so easy. Or swing longs if you inverse the chart. Whatever you find appropriate. Is it too early to say that the next leg is coming? I don't understand. VVIX to others. I was introduced to this on one of my previous streams, you might remember, and I paid some attention to it. And the hit rate is magnificent, to be honest. Redbox for de-risking, March, April 2024, December 2024, November 2021, right? Cycle highs, ding, ding, ding. On the other hand, August 2024, increased exposure, and April 2025, increased exposure in the green zone. Really, really helpful index. Thank you to the member that introduced me to this. Really helpful for higher time frame navigation and to understand where we stand in the market. If we push a bit higher for those divergences, I expect this to go a bit deeper into this red box. But the deeper it goes, the more confluence you have to be taking profits, right? So really a lot of confluences. Fear and greed index at greed as well. Open interest pretty high. I'll introduce you to one of my favorite short setups I've recently seen, and a tragic story I will share with you as well. Sui, one of my favorite altcoins. Basically, in my view, no better altcoin to trade on higher time frames than Sui. Why? Because it tops on daily bearish divergences, 3 drive in this case. It bottoms. This was a 3-day as well, but we also have a daily, although it's not really oversold. Topped at a daily bearish divergence. Then a full daily RSI reset, and now a daily bearish divergence as well. If you look at the open interest on something like Sui, it just tells you how much people have been aping this coin recently. And look at this. Look at the open interest that accumulated the last time Sui did a daily bearish divergence. And look at it now. Very, very similar, not really an area or a pattern that I would fade. I think it is possible that Sui will give a full daily RSI reset. Maybe until late August or going into September. And that's where you can potentially look to buy for a swing again. I do have a limit at 3.27, which will only remain there if we get a flush. If it slowly drops towards that level, I will likely cancel it, and then I would be looking for a buy here, 280, 290. That's a really big zone for me. But just wanted to illustrate what open interest has been doing in the last few days, right? A lot of coins being aped on perps and then forming these higher time frame bearish divergences. So Sui and ETH have been among the strongest altcoins, right? They already have a bearish divergence on the daily. Some weaker altcoins do not have them yet. That doesn't mean that they will get them, but it just shows that they have been weaker, weak enough to not form a daily divergence, but maybe a divergence on more lower time frames. Now, the way I tried to short this last night was I was being aware that we have a daily bearish divergence forming, right? Just get rid of this. And then what I did in addition to the daily, I looked at the lower time frame and tried to spot a lower time frame divergence. In this case, on the 2 hour, there was a bit of a wider one on the 1 hour as well. This one, a bit wide, so not the perfect divergence, but still something to play with. In addition to that, we also had some nice POC levels to play. And unfortunately, I got stopped break even here at 4.417 while sleeping. And then it dropped like 7%, 8%. Very unfortunate, but I think there were a few people who caught this. We talked about this potential short setup for Sui shaping up 7 days ago. So last week. I think it was even here, somewhere around here. So we did anticipate a small pullback and then another leg up from that bearish divergence. And this is exactly what we would be looking at for total market cap and all the other indexes as well to potentially look for short setups. So I'm really interested in shorting these days. And if you get another pop in the market, I will potentially open like 1 or 2 swing shorts. I hope we get it. I really hope we do. Because I'm a higher time frame trader, right? Whether I buy spot or I swing short, it doesn't matter to me. It's just the inverse chart. Now for Tao, for example, we have something similar unfolding on it. I'm a bit more skeptical, but because it does look pretty good on higher time frames. Not gonna lie. But if we look at how the daily is shaping up, I mean it is already a daily bearish divergence. See, this is a daily bear dip. What I was hoping though is that we get a daily 3 drive. Might be a bit too late for that. Probably need to pump towards this level today or tomorrow. We'll probably don't get it, but this was something I was monitoring for a short on Tau. But yeah, I mean, Ethereum already has the daily div, right? So it might just play out as a regular divergence here. Yeah, we got a nice POC level as well. Probably if you zoom in on more lower time frames, you will also see a lower time frame divergence. Was a great short setup, minus 10%. And if this plays out, this is going way lower. And same here, I would be looking for a daily RSI reset. Now, whether that comes at our spot limit or a bit lower, we will evaluate along the way. But a lot of these setups forming, a lot of these setups forming. Pepe as well, a few days ago actually. Perfect speed drive. We talked about this on the fundamentals as well. I think a few people actually took some profits on it because of this setup. Here again, perfect speed drive. Would wait for at least for a 12-hour RSI reset. And I honestly think we will get filled on this limit that we have here in the next few days and weeks. But you understand what I mean, right? A lot of these moves on alts have been exhausted in the last few days. Of course, there are outliers, right? There are altcoins that will make new highs today or over the last weekend or even in the next few days, right? But overall, we're seeing some signs of exhaustion in the market, which educates our bias that it is or it was a good idea over the weekend to take some major profits off the table, and then you will be ready for when a pullback comes, and when it comes, that's where you want to bid, basically. Who did a lot of talking? Let's see what we got here. How do I read the VVIX index, is it only for altcoins or does it apply? It applies for everything. I explained it a bit earlier. I don't know if you listened to that, Curtis. So if that wasn't sufficient, let me know. I'll go over it again. Sui H-bar making H-bar, yeah, also another one. I looked at this yesterday actually, and I mean this is perfect. This is perfect. Clean as a whistle. Resistance area as well. Look at this. Oh, come on, Sui. Don't do this to me. Daily bear div. H-bar, daily bear div. What I saw a bit earlier. Injective. You're seeing it across the market, guys. Now you might be saying, well, DB, I don't care about the daily bearish divergences, right? That's, of course, you're right. You can do that. But then you'll have to have another trigger for buying, right? That might be something else. But this is what I personally look at. And I don't fade divergences. If we invalidate them and we reclaim this resistance zone, I'll change my bias and I'll say, yeah, let's buy injective here, right? But as long as this is the case, risk off for me. Not a buyer. What's that? Oh, Sui, man. Oh, I set these alerts when I enter the short. Can you imagine? This is so painful. I hate these alerts. What's happening here? Oh man, a few of you are printing, aren't you? That's crazy. I think I think Sui will give it a 15 to 20% flush soon. Something like this. Look, we had a daily bear div here, right? And after it confirmed, it basically dropped 25%. And then yes, it did go higher for the 3 drive, but it did give a 20-25% drop. Oh man, I wish I wasn't this short. This was a A+ setup for me. Crazy, crazy. It is what it is. My VVX is not showing like yours. You made some settings. It is should be the same, no? It's the same, bro. I just drew these boxes myself. I just drew these boxes myself. Look. It's the same chart you got. What's the buy zone for Sui? Honestly, after that bear div, not really interested in buying anytime soon. Not here. Absolutely not here. I hope you took some profits. As I said, I have a limit at 3.27. If it gets filled on a flush, that would be sick. But if it starts slowly dropping towards this level, then we will reevaluate this and then look for local triggers for buying. But I mean, even Sui BTC, look at this. Daily bear div. Additional confluence to what we just explained about Sui, right? And I'm explaining this to you so you can take this as an example for other setups, right? Because it's such a perfect example on when you take profits to the market and when you potentially look for short setups, potentially even swing short setups. Oh, look at the dollar. Yeah, they announced a trading deal between the US and the EU, and the dollar reacts like this. Still in the belief that the dollar is bottomed. It doesn't look like it from a weekly perspective, of course. But assets are becoming expensive, guys, right? If you're an ETH holder from 1,600 and you hold it all the way to 4K, wouldn't you want to rotate it into something that is really cheap and that can rise in the next few years? That's how I would approach the market. And this is why I'm personally accumulating a lot of dollars. So not really rotating my profits into Bitcoin, but rather into dollars. And then if you get something like this in the next 2 years, keyword in years, not this week, then I'll be rotating everything I have into Bitcoin here. That's my long-term plan, right? We've discussed it several times. What is the outlook on Nasdaq and S&P 500? Do we also have potential bearish divergences? Yes, absolutely. S&P 500, it's been up 30% in a very short period of time, right? Long term, no doubt that it will make new highs, right? The S&P 500, it cannot go to zero, right? This is basically the US economy. It can always have corrective periods like this one, but ultimately it will just continue to do this, right? It will reach these levels in the next 2 decades, absolutely. More lower time frames, and with lower time frame I mean the monthly, which is not really lower time frame, but you get the point. We could be getting a monthly bearish divergence soon. However, I don't use divergences that much on stock indexes because they're less reliable. But in terms of TA, yeah, we got a potential bear div on the monthly for the S&P 500. But this will obviously have a lot to do with how global liquidity shapes up in the next few months, right? Still rising, inflation not yet high enough for central banks to stop easing or to start hiking interest rates, right? I mentioned this in my corner a bit earlier today. As soon as we start seeing that, we can speculate on a bear market in traditional financial markets, but that's not the case yet. You got 94.6% as a potential DXY bottom. Again, I'm not a predictor, right? I don't like to predict things because they might happen something that can be ultra bearish for the dollar, right? And just make it nuke more. And after all, we do have a US president that is interested in keeping the dollar weak because he wants to fight the US trade deficit, right? So he wants to boost domestic exports, and if the dollar is weak, that will help do it because US products will become more attractive to foreign investors, right? So there may always be some form of policy that may be introduced that can keep the dollar weak, but from a TA perspective alone, I would be very surprised if it loses these range lows. But yeah, you got the same level, right? What did you say, 94? 94.6. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe a wick down there, right? And then it closes the weekly up. But I would be surprised if these range lows do not hold. And this is not only a TA thing, right? There are also a few other things. This was also due to market anticipating a recession in the US due to tariffs. We are getting more and more trading deals, right? So the number one catalyst for the decline of the dollar is slowly fading. Short positions on the dollar are decreasing, are closing because of that, especially because of the trading deal between the EU and the United States and the United States and China, right? So also from a fundamental or macro perspective, there are reasons to believe that the dollar may have dropped. Another one is that market participants, because of recession fears, have anticipated that the Federal Reserve will start easing, cutting interest rates, right? And have front run a potential pivot of the Federal Reserve, which is why it declined before any kind of interest rate cut was announced, right? So now we have basically two of the biggest catalysts that led to the decline of the dollar being more or less priced in. But of course, as I said, there can be new developments that can lead to the drop of the dollar or the further drop of the dollar, which is why I don't want to make predictions. But as things stand right now, I think we've found a very big zone of interest for the dollar, and where I will be accumulating cheap dollars in anticipation of it increasing in the next few years, because this will remain the dominant currency. Don't listen to crypto Twitter that the dollar is losing its dominance globally. That won't happen ever. Unfortunately, we only have 1 more minute. Do you rather hold fiat currency than hard, soft assets? Yeah, man. I mean, crypto is getting a bit overpriced, and the dollar is still cheap, right? So for me, unless we get a nice flush to rotate back into some cryptocurrencies, I'll just be scalping, right, and accumulating cheap dollars. What's your outlook on gold? What's there to outlook it? It will just keep going up and up and up. Nothing that it's of my interest. All right. Unfortunately, we have to wrap it up. It's already 6 o'clock. I realized that I didn't stop talking throughout the stream. But as I said, a lot of things to discuss on lower time frames, on higher time frames. I think we have a very clear picture on what to expect in the next few days, right? We covered several indexes to understand this picture, to understand this bias. Again, we don't have to predict anything. We will always evaluate based on local triggers. If local triggers tell us a different story, we may need to change our bias. But as things are shaping up, we have a pretty clear picture on what's going on. As I said, if we get another push in the market, we're looking for these daily divergences to form and to confirm. That's a big risk-off signal. Don't forget to take any profits. Don't be a victim of euphoria in the market. Are we cycle topped? I don't know. I don't care, right? We will be trading level by level. Might not even be the case yet that we're cycle topped. I think we could go a bit higher in Q4. But again, we will be navigating the market from a macro level to macro level perspective and try to catch all local bottoms and tops. If we say we're close to a local top here, doesn't mean that we're going into a bear market, right? And because that will depend on monetary policy on a global level as well. So that's just an issue of technical analysis. And we will be here to discuss that if we see these triggers. Not there yet. But on more lower time frames, yes, some TP areas being hit. All right, guys, thank you for joining and for engaging in the chat. Let me know on the fundamentals if you have any questions. Stay safe trading, and I'll see you on the next macro stream with Rego on Wednesday. And of course, I will be around on the fundamentals and in my corner for questions and comments. Have a nice day, guys. Take care.